In 1890, a guide to running an English household laid out exactly how to keep a butler honest. The master kept the keys to the wine cellar. He handed the wine out a fixed number of dozens at a time, once a week or once a month if he wanted to watch more closely. And every single day, the butler had to open a book and write down how many bottles the house had drunk. Claret, champagne, sherry, port. He was not allowed to taste the wine. He was not allowed to choose it or buy it. The master did all of that himself. The book had one job. It was there as the check upon him. Nobody had caught the butler stealing. The book was not a punishment for anything he had done. It was the baseline, the ordinary condition of working in that house. The house did not run on trust. It ran on a ledger, and the butler was the first thing written into it, and it reached everywhere. When there was wine to bottle, the butler got up at 4 or 5 in the morning to do it before the day began, so that the cellar work does not materially interfere with the day's duties. Then there was the beer. In country houses, the butler brewed the household's own beer, and he brewed it in a week when the master and mistress were away, because that was the only stretch of time he had free. It came out hard, a little sour, and the people who had to drink it were the other servants. Those obliged to drink it are not in a position to express an opinion on its demerits. They drank what they were handed. Their opinion was not part of the accounting. Nobody wrote down what they thought of it because nobody was checking. Half a century earlier, in 1843, an American writer named Beecher had already measured how fast those people moved through a house. She wrote advice for young women who would one day run households of their own, and she made what she plainly believed was a generous suggestion. If you keep more than one servant, she wrote, give each of them a bed of their own. Her reason was not comfort. It was so a servant would not be obliged to sleep with all the changing domestics who come and go so often. The changing domestics who come and go so often. A servant arrived, filled a place and left, and another servant filled the same place, and then another. They moved through so quickly that a bed of one's own was not a given. It was something a kind writer had to argue for, and where a room was too small for 2 beds, Beecher's solution was a truckle-bed, a low bed that slid underneath the other one. Stack them if you have to, just don't make them share. A person the house could count, swap out, stack under another bed, and replace the moment they left was a person it had already decided how much to spend on, and the decision showed up in the floor plan. In 1790, a Scottish doctor named William Buchan wrote the most popular book of home medicine of the entire century. Families kept it in the house for when someone fell ill, and in it, Buchan set down a plain medical fact about where servants slept. Servants obliged to live in cellars and sunk stories, he wrote, seldom continue long in health. Cellars. Sunk stories. The half-buried rooms below street level where the damp never dried out. That is where the house put the people it could replace. Below the line, in the most literal sense, and Buchan, as a doctor, knew what living down there did to a body. They did not last. He did not think he could simply state it and move on. He wrote that masters ought to pay regard to the health of their servants as well as their own. He had to say it. A doctor, in a medical book, had to make the case that the servant sleeping in the cellar had lungs that mattered too. It was not obvious. It was not assumed. If it had been obvious, the sentence would not have needed writing. So a servant's lungs could be set against the convenience of a dry room upstairs and lose. That is the arithmetic running inside a wealthy house. Buchan had also seen where the same arithmetic goes in a house that has nothing left to spend at all. In the same book, he turned to the poorest homes in the country. No servants, no spare cellars, no wine to count. Just parents and children and not enough of anything. Poverty, he wrote, could get so far the better of natural affection that poor parents, instead of wishing their children to live, are often very happy when they die. Happy when they die. Not relieved of the child's suffering, not at peace. Happy because the child had been a cost and the cost was gone. Buchan says many poor people thought of a child not as a blessing but is the greatest curse that can befall them. That is what the ledger does when it reaches all the way to the bottom. In the great house, it decided which servant slept in the cellar. In the poorest house, it sat a parent down beside a dying child and made the death feel like a weight lifted. The love was still meant to be there. Poverty had simply gotten the better of it. Buchan was a doctor. He had watched a living child turn into a cost in a sum nobody had meant to write. And he proposed a fix. Not love, not shame, not God. His fix was accounting. He proposed that the government pay each poor family a small premium, a sum of money, every year for every child still alive at the year's end. Keep the child alive 12 months and the money came in. That was the whole mechanism. A payment on a living child, made once a year, counted by the head, and he argued it would work better than anything else anyone was doing. He wrote that it would save more infant lives than the entire revenue of the crown spent on hospitals. Just pay the parents to keep the child alive, because he understood exactly what he was up against. He had said it himself, the poor thought a child, the greatest curse that could befall them. So he did not try to change their hearts. He changed the sum. Put money on the other side of the ledger, he argued, and the poor would come to esteem fertility a blessing. They would want the child to live because a living child at year's end was finally worth something. The house ran on a book. It counted the wine, and it counted the beds, and it counted the bodies it put in the cellar, and in the end it counted the children, and the only cure anyone could think of for a heart that had been turned into a ledger was to write a kinder number into it. To set a price on a living child high enough that a poor family would want to keep it. That was the mercy on offer. Pay them to want the child alive.